Trumplicans, Cuckservatives, I want you to pay very close attention because this is the company that you are keeping. Never Trump has paid a very stiff price for telling the truth about Donald Trump. This is David French's account of what has befallen him and his family for standing up for conservatism, standing up for truth, standing up for Christian faith, and trying to save the Republican Party. And there are many others as well. Trump's alt-right trolls have subjected David French and his family to an unending torrent of abuse that he would not wish on anyone. He distinctly remembers the first time he saw a picture of his then 7-year-old daughter's face in a gas chamber. It was the evening of September 17th, 2015. Mr. French had just posted a short item to the corner at nationalreview.com calling out notorious Trump ally Ann Coulter. She's been awfully quiet since he sold her down the river on amnesty, hasn't she? I can't resist observing that. For aping the white nationalist language and rhetoric of the so-called alt-right. White nationalists, white supremacists, national socialists, all more or less the same. Within minutes, the tweets came flooding in. Mr. French's youngest daughter, you see, is African American, adopted from Ethiopia, as a matter of fact. And in alt-right circles, that's an unforgivable sin. It's called race cucking, or raising the enemy. The enemy? Really? French saw images of his daughter's face in gas chambers with a smiling Trump in a Nazi uniform preparing to press a button and kill her. That's his alt-right supporters doing, creating that imagery, Trump supporters. French saw her face photoshopped into images of slaves. She was called a niglet and a dindu. The alt-right unleashed on his wife, claiming that she had slept with black men while French was deployed to Iraq, and that French loved to watch while she had sex with black bucks. People sent her pornographic images of black men having sex with white women, with someone photoshopped to look like French watching. When they both publicized some of these racist attacks, David French in National Review and his wife in the Washington Post, things took a far more ominous turn. Late the next evening, while Nancy, his wife, was fortunately offline attending a veterans charity event in D.C., the darker quarters of the alt-right found her Pathos blog. Several different accounts began posting images and GIFs of extreme violence in her comment section. Click on a post and scroll down and you'll see pictures of black men shooting other black men, close-up images of suicides, GIFs of grisly executions, the kinds of psyche-scarring things that one cannot unsee. Had French not deployed to Iraq and witnessed death up close, the images would have shocked him. He quickly got on the phone with his wife, told her not to look at her website, and got busy deleting comments and blocking IP addresses. But in the meantime, a few friends and neighbors had seen the posts. The next Sunday, friends from church approached, expressing concern not just for their safety, but for all of his friends' safety as well. The Frenches live in a community where most of the streets have similar names, and it's common for UPS drivers, FedEx deliveries, and friends to end up at the wrong house. They interpreted the images as threats, and they didn't want anyone to drive into the French's neighborhood looking for the Frenches and intent on turning image into reality. It took days and hundreds of IP blocks and Twitter reports, but things finally calmed down. The racist images slowed from a flood to a trickle. Mr. French relaxed a bit at night, and life returned, he thought, to normal. But he was wrong. Their normal had changed. This wasn't the beginning of the end of their troubles, but rather the end of the beginning. French shares his family's story not because they are unique or because their experience is all that extraordinary, but rather because it is depressingly, disturbingly ordinary in this campaign season. The formula is simple. Criticize Trump, especially his connection to the alt-right, and the backlash will come. Eric Erickson experienced his own ordeal more than a month before the Frenches did. After Erickson disinvited Trump from his red state gathering, angry Trump supporters showed up at his house. A grown man yelled at his children at a store, condemning their father for opposing Trump. Erickson wrote in the New York Times that his son is still fearful that Trump supporters will come back to their home. I think that qualifies as trauma. And it's something I can't imagine. I am temperamentally, I am libertarian. Not ideologically so much, but temperamentally I am. I am the biggest live and let live person there ever is. I see, I see Trump signs, Trump bumper stickers, even in my neck of the woods. I don't flip the people off. I might roll my eyes, but I don't get up in people's face. If I were to see someone in a great Make America Great Again trucker ball cap, I wouldn't go up to them and punch them in the face or tear off the hat and throw it down a garbage chute or whatever. I don't get that. I don't get that. I only fire back when I'm fired upon. I don't initiate it. Even on Facebook, I know who's a Trump supporter and who's not in my friends list. As a general rule, I don't deliberately, I don't paste my stuff all over their walls. I just post it on my own. Just express myself. I don't impose on anybody else. I don't understand that mentality. But a lot of Trump supporters seem to have it for some reason. In March, writer Bethany Mandel related her own experience at forward.com. After tweeting about Trump's anti-Semitic followers, she was called a, quote, slimy Jewess, close quote, and told that she, quote, deserves the oven, close quote. I know you would probably think, oh, how could it get worse? Well, it did. Not only was the anti-Semitic deluge scary and graphic, it got personal. Trump fans began to dox her, a term for adversaries' attempt to ferret out private or identifying information online with malicious intent. Her conversion to Judaism was used as a weapon against her, and she received death threats in her private Facebook mailbox, prompting her to file a police report. Death threats. Death threats. Remember when politics was about persuasion and inspiring people and saying, this is what I stand for? vote for me, elect me, and I will do this, 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 and this. Death threats. The phenomenon got some attention in the spring when the Daily Beast reported not just on Mandel's experience, but also on Erickson's, Rick Wilson's, and others. It is showing no signs of slowing down either. Big names, small names, any names. If you attack Trump, no matter who you are, your life might just change or end. Earlier this month, Nei Parrish, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, president of the Arizona Republic, wrote a powerful response to the deluge of threats and bullying prompted by the paper's endorsement of Hillary Clinton. Now understand, the Arizona Republic is a right-of-center newspaper. They have, I don't know if they've ever, I'd have to go back and research, I don't know if they've ever endorsed the Democrat candidate for president. They did this year, and it wasn't because they're Hillary supporters, but because the imperative is to stop Trump. An Anti-Defamation League report identified 800 journalists who have been targeted with anti-Semitic tweets. 10 journalists, including Jonah Goldberg of National Review, who have borne the brunt of the attacks, and one, Ben Shapiro, who's received a staggering amount of hatred. Now, why Shapiro, you might ask? Well, look at the name, Shapiro. What does that suggest to you? Because he represents the worst of all possible anti-Trumpers. He's a Jewish man who turned on the twin pillars of the alt-right, Trump and Breitbart.com. Shapiro famously resigned from Breitbart when it refused to support reporter Michelle Fields after then Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski, the vicious niblet, grabbed and pulled Fields in the press scrum at a Trump event. More victims are coming forward. In a painful, vulnerable post, commentator Mickey White writes about how the alt-right came after her and her family, triggering a mental health crisis. In the face of the abuse, she sought help, but help was slow to come. Quote from Medium.com. I reached out to people I thought I could trust, and to this day I'm not sure if that was the right thing to do. At the time, I was desperate, though, as the trolling had increased from mere tweets to DMs from very random famous accounts. Then emails went out to people suggesting that I might harm myself, even though I had indicated nothing of the sort. Anyone who responded to me would also be shamed or harassed. I was advised that I was about to be swatted. I contacted, a false flag, called a local law enforcement, sending a SWAT team to bust into your house in the middle of the night. Remember the last rash of such attacks was the Democrats doing it to Tea Partiers in Wisconsin. Supporters of Scott Walker a couple of years ago. Remember that? I contacted my local sheriff and eventually the FBI. As all of this was happening, the people behind these accounts made an ominous threat towards a family member. My sister, the single most important person to me in the world. And so, the fuse was lit. The abuse is so common that I've lost count of other reporters and writers who have told French, often in confidence, of troubling late-night incidents at their homes, or of tweets and other messages that went far beyond garden-variety Twitter trolling into disturbing threats and sometimes horrifying images. And it never seems to stop. It certainly hasn't stopped for the Frenches. This summer, French's name leaked to the press after he spoke with Bill Kristol about the possibility of mounting an independent run for the White House. As expected, Trump fans reacted, this time with an assist from the media. Politico reporter Kevin Robillard tweeted an excerpt from an interview about French's deployment to Iraq, making it seem, wrongly, as if he had prohibited his wife from emailing or speaking with other men while he was downrange. Online Trump World took that tweet and transformed it into a campaign of harassment directed against French and his wife that continues to this day. I mean, don't these people have anything else to do? I mean, it's like, well, they're unemployed. They don't have a job. They sit around and do this all day. I mean, I've been unemployed for 3 years. I don't harass people. I just put out what I think, but I don't direct it at anybody else. Why can't they just campaign for Trump, extol Trump if they want to do it? They're free to do so. Why do they have to attack people who oppose Trump? Unsolicited, unprovoked. All of that harassment of the Frenches is sexually charged. All of it disturbing. Now, Mr. French's wife is a tough woman. She is a survivor of sexual abuse and assault. The notion that she can no longer open her Twitter timeline without seeing men boasting about having sex with her while French was in Iraq, or even while he's home, is intolerable. It is relentless, and it often gets under even her very thick skin. Makes me glad that my wife doesn't have an online presence. It makes me glad that my wife doesn't have a Twitter account or a Facebook account. You know, I mean, if you want to take issue with me for my opposition to Trump, take it up with me. Don't take it up with family. They don't have anything to do with it. Of course, no story would be complete without a truly ominous threat. The moment that the Frenches landed back at home after he declined to run for president, his wife turned on her phone to see an email from a Trump fan, a veteran who informed her that he knew the business end of a gun and told her directly that she should shut her mouth or he would take action. A death threat. Not against French, but against French's wife. The Frenches contacted law enforcement, and his wife got her handgun carry permit, and life returned to the new normal of daily Twitter harassment until the day this month when an angry voice actually broke into a phone conversation between French's wife and her elderly father, screaming about Trump and spewing profanities. In other words, somebody had tapped the French's phone line. I thought that was supposed to be illegal. I mean, his wife was on her iPhone. Her father was on a landline. So either they're tapping her iPhone or they're tapping her elderly father's landline, one of the two. That launched a brief, anxious search inside her father's home for a potential intruder and yet another call to law enforcement. Online hate has become so common that it's almost a point of perverse pride among some pundits. If you don't get hateful messages, you must not matter. If you let the hate bother you, you must be weak. Indeed, in a world where feeding the trolls only makes them stronger, admitting that they've hurt you at all represents a victory for the worst of the worst. They relish your pain, and you don't want them to relish anything. But French is honest. It's miserable. There is nothing at all rewarding, enjoyable, or satisfying about seeing your beautiful young daughter called a niglet. There is nothing at all rewarding, enjoyable, or satisfying about seeing man after man after man, well, man, in I put that's a generous concession there. Brag in graphic terms that he has slept with your wife. They're not men. It's unsettling to have a phone call interrupted, watch images of murder flick across your screen, and read threatening emails. It's sobering to take your teenage kids out to the farm to make sure they're both proficient with handguns in case an intruder comes when they're home alone. I mean, doesn't that kind of fit, so-called man after so-called man after so-called man bragging in graphic terms that he has slept with your wife? Doesn't that fit with a candidate who brags about he can just go around sexually assaulting women and he gets to do it because he's rich and famous? And so many so-called Christians defend that, make excuses for it, including Douglas V. Gibbs. The misery is compounded when longtime friends and allies dismiss French's experiences and the experiences of his colleagues as nothing more than the normal cost of public advocacy. I'm reminded of what Jean-Luc Picard said in Star Trek First Contact when he said, "This far, no further, and I will make them pay for what they've done." It's not normal. It's not acceptable. French has contributed to National Review for more than 10 years now and has been deeply involved in many of America's most emotional culture war battles for more than 20 years. He's never experienced anything like this before. He has to laugh when people accuse him of opposing Trump because it somehow makes him rich. I wish. I haven't gotten one red cent from it. For my own little, in the big picture, contribution to the Never Trump effort. Or because French is currying favors with guests at the elite cocktail parties that he never actually attends. He opposes, and I oppose, Trump, not just because he's an ignorant demagogue and a naked political opportunist, but also because bigotry and intimidation cling to his campaign, and he has never repudiated any of it. I mean, sure, every campaign attracts its share of fools, cranks, and crazies, but Trump's candidacy has weaponized them. Every harassing tweet and every violent threat is like a voice whispering in our ears, telling us to do all that we can to oppose a movement that breeds and exploits such reckless hate. Two weeks ago, Mr. French and his wife were enjoying lunch with friends after church. His son's football coach asked if things had calmed down after the tumult of the summer. He grabbed his phone and said, "Let's see," and opened his Twitter mentions. He laughed at the first one, a standard profane rant calling him a traitor for opposing Trump, but then his wife looked, her face twisted up in shock. There they were, just below, more tweets from more so-called men aimed directly at her. She burst into tears. You know what they say about you have a problem with me? Fine, let's settle it between us. You go after my family, fuck you. You make it personal, you're going to get personal in return. So no, things have not calmed down. And French is always amused when people tell him that he belongs to Never Trump because it makes him feel good about himself. There's nothing that gives him or me any pleasure about this election season. It is the biggest on-rolling tragedy in political terms that of my life, certainly of my lifetime. Because always before we knew that our side was our side. If we lost, we lost. But we could always come back the next time. Our party was still our party. Not anymore. Our party is now their party. The GOP is now a wholly owned subsidiary of the left. It's just National Socialist as opposed to Marxian Socialist. But otherwise, but if we can do anything to expose and oppose this latest debasement of our politics and culture coming from what within and from what used to be the grand old party, and to defend our wives, our daughters, our sons, our children, our families, that, ladies and gentlemen, that, Trump supporters, is our purpose. And what do I recommend that you Trump supporters do? You Trumplicans who have been pushing him from the beginning. You Cuckservatives who obsequiously bowed the knee 5 months ago. I want you to consider long and hard the company that you people are really keeping.